We are now live. My name is Heidi Love, and you are listening in to Real Life Talk with my good friend here, Timothy. And we're excited to kind of continue the talk we had going last week. And we will open with our topic, which is a quote by Marianne Williamson. We'll get to that in a minute, so stay tuned. Thanks for being on with us. I wanted to say to all our listeners, we love to interact with you. So please make comments in the comment box on Facebook, and we will be chatting back and forth with you. So if I look distracted, I'm just reading comments and typing back to you. And I am here on the lovely island of Hawaii, big island of Hawaii, and I get to travel tomorrow. So I'm going to be going to the Bay Area in San Francisco, and I'm excited about that. Have some change of scenery, but I'll still be here with you every Tuesday. And I'm excited for our talk tonight. It's something really dear to my heart. There's a lot of readings from A Course in Miracles and Marianne Williamson, and I have found it one of the many tools. And for those of you that don't know, I have a private practice. I see people nationwide on Zoom and do private retreat here in Hawaii and also Northern California. And I love working with people who are ready to do the work, who want better intimacy, better communication, happier family systems, working with families, couples, and individuals. All you, Timothy.
And Heidi, like me, does, as she said, inquiry calls or exploratory calls, half hour for free. And if you are serious about up-leveling your life in some way or dealing with something that's hindering you from finding greater happiness and joy, please look up her website, which is scrolling right now, and start an exploratory call. And if you feel more resonance with me, then you can do the same. My website will scroll at some point, and both of us love doing that. Why are we here? Whew. Why?
Wait, I want to say one more thing about that. Yeah, Timothy, and also Timothy and I are willing to both work with you. You have a family thing going on. You feel like you need the male-female energy and support from both views that Timothy and I share. We can certainly work with you together too. That would be super fun. I didn't ask Timothy about that, so.
No, that's fine. I have someone right now who's referring the male half of the couple to me to do some specific work around sexuality. And then she's still doing the person who identifies as a woman within the relationship and some of the couples stuff. And it's a great way to work together with a couple. Or with one individual who needs both perspectives. So yeah, lots of different ways to do it. But I was leading into this idea of why are we here? Why are we on planet Earth at this time, breathing all the same oxygen in the same room, if you will? And I think today's talk, with the help of Marianne Williamson's quote, will shed some light on a possible answer to why are we here. So is there anything? Oh, Heidi and I also ought to mention that we're both part of Love Coach Academy. Love Coach Academy does talks like this pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day, morning and night. Ours is at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. There's a free empathy practice group Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and a whole bunch of other things. So if you want to learn more about Love Coach Academy, that'll scroll too, and you can go there. You can find our talks, past ones, and we've changed names. We used to be Recovery Talk, and now we're Real Life Talk because we want to expand some of the topics. And both Heidi and I have dealt with personal addiction, different types, and both of us have worked with people and still do on addiction. And so we did a whole series, Heidi's brilliant at this, around addiction, habitual patterns, how to identify whether we're being codependent or interdependent, love addiction, love fantasy, boundaries, you name it. suicidal ideation. We covered so many great things. I would highly encourage you, if you like these talks, share them out and go back and look at some of our past ones. They're good, and we've had some guests as well.
Yeah,
So
and one
without,
thing we love is you letting us know what's one thing you got out of the call. We love you to type that into the comment box or just let us know. That gives us great feedback, and it's also a way you can contribute back to us for what you're getting, and we get to know, and it feels really good to know what you're getting. I wanted to say one thing about that, just you talking about all the different topics we cover. Something hit me, and I know, and this kind of goes with our reading, which Timothy is going to do in a moment, but I feel that this is just really tender to my heart right now and goes with our topic. So I love the book Facing Love Addiction and Facing Codependency, and those are all often books that I have quoted, or we've read things through it in some of these classes. And I was reading something the other night and it hit me because I have a personal dilemma, whatever, challenge in doing this work that I've always had. And it's that whatever I'm doing, I have to be perfect. And if I'm not perfect, I shouldn't be doing it. And that's a negative belief that I've dealt with my whole life and I still struggle with. And obviously, I'm not perfect, so I wouldn't be able to do anything if I let that belief run my life. And I was reading in the book, and Pia Melody, the author, shared that while she was teaching this work, the love addiction work, and while she was writing the book, she was in an active love addiction. And it just was really tender to me because I was like, wow, okay, right there's the universe permission, that little reminder that I don't have to be perfect. And I think that that is something that I love about Timothy and that I cherish about myself, as that we share our stuff with you. We're not better than you. We're not different than you. We might have different skills, just like you might have a different job we know nothing about and have a lot of skills you could teach us. But we are perfectly human, and what we share and teach and take you through in our private practices are, of course, things we've researched and have a ton of knowledge about, but we have experienced all of it as well, non-coherently and coherently. So just felt like saying that.
yeah, you're striking a chord, which I think could be another talk, and that's just about the value of humility. What is humility? And the difference
I'll write it
between,
down.
yeah, the difference between humble confidence and mimicking. And I know I have mimicked at times, or fake it till you make it. But when you have lived through something and learned your way out of it, you often have a map or a process that you can then teach to other people. And then when you add in studying and being trained or training with people who have also done the same thing, I think that makes you a good guide or a good coach. And again, Heidi and I like exploratory phone calls because both of us know our limitations or our expertise, and we're not really wanting to coach someone or guide someone in an area that we aren't equipped to guide them. Heidi has a beautiful analogy of, if you're going to go through a lava tube, you want to hire a guide who's been through the lava tube. And so in our intake calls, if we recognize I'm not the guide for you, we will make sure to refer you to somebody. We have someone in our database that is your guide through that lava. So most people know this quote. And every time I hear it, I have this little part of me, I'm going to admit this, that goes, oh yeah, that quote. And I'm inviting all of us, me included, to just forget that we've ever heard it and do our best to listen to it anew with a childlike, open curiosity. Oh, here we go. It's by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, Reflections on the Principles of A Course in Miracles.
Ah, it's interesting. If we had somebody live on here, would love it just to see the triggers that brings up for each of us individually. So I'm just curious for whoever's listening, if that brings up something for you, like Timothy shared, like, oh, that quit again, or does it bring up fear of, do you even resonate with it? I'm trying to think exactly what it brings up for me, and it's brought up different things at different times in my life. So I'm going to just pull this quote up again.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Just answering your question, I notice what comes up for me a lot when I hear the quote is, I haven't been as amazing as, and then there's a comparison. And so I'm not living this quote to my fullest potential. I don't have as much money as so and so. I don't have as much celebrity. I haven't helped as many people. I'm not as good as, all these comparisons. And yet what she's saying is, you know, I'm listening to my own internal dialogue that is in those moments that is diminishing my light. And I believe her. I'm actually in those moments afraid of really being the perfectly unique resonance or vibration or frequency or expression of self that I am. And it's usually when I look at it because I'm afraid of being rejected, condemned, ridiculed, picked on. And then I can do my own work and look at moments in my life where those things did happen. And so my past then becomes something I'm projecting onto the future. And Marianne Williamson, in my mind, is inviting us to notice that, not to bypass it. And then to really lean into, if I am my own singular expression of the divine, what is it that the divine is calling me to do? And today we're going to get into, I believe, ways of identifying how to live a more divine expression of oneself. Last week we covered what is a hell yes, and that's a piece of it. But the idea today is to give you some tools or maps to move through the things that hinder you or the stories that you tell yourself. So I just shared mine, a few of them. Heidi's got some.
So I typed in the chat box comparison just as an example of like what Timothy shared came up for him was comparison. And I think that, looking at this, automatically I'm thinking about addiction. And my first thought was, nah, the darkness scares me way more than the light. But it's actually not true, because if I think of when I've been in addiction or I'm in active addiction, that does terrify me. But to let that go, which feels familiar, which feels comforting, which is known, to jump into the unknown, which is she's talking about, the unknown of that part of us that's light and that's amazing and that is powerful beyond measure. There's responsibility with that. And to have the fear removed enough to lean into that, it seems contraindicated. Like, it makes sense intellectually. Why wouldn't you want to be gorgeous, talented, brilliant, fabulous? Like, who wouldn't want to be, right? But there's reasons. There's reasons in our shadow side where maybe the darkness feels more comfortable. So that might not be understandable to some of you. I don't know. But that's what it brought up for me today, was just that my first thought was, no, the darkness is way more scary, but it's I think it through, it's really not. It's been where I've lived a lot of times in more comfort until it was so painful that I had to move towards the light. And when I read this too, I always think of the shadow is always there. Our shadow side is always there. But when you walk in a room and it's dark and you simply turn the light on, there's light, period.
Maybe a few shadows lurking
Yeah.
back behind some behind the plant. But yeah, I get you. For me, there's this without the shadow, without the limiting beliefs, without the pain, without the suffering, we wouldn't truly know divine, truly know love is actually greater than pain, greater than the shadow. Light is great. Bring these things into light and allow them to be guides that bring us back to our essence. But I want to touch on, she says words like fabulous, amazing, blah, blah, blah. And those trigger in me movie star, politician, doctor, Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel laureate, like all these Phi Beta Kappa, like all these different symbols. And I don't believe that's what actually Marianne Williamson is. If your pure essence calling you to be a river guide in the Colorado Grand Canyon, and you do everything within your power and you follow that path, and eventually you are the river guide in Colorado Canyon, and you just love it, and you're doing that for your whole life and guiding people down the river. Well, you're doing exactly what she's talking about, even if it's not seen by the rest of humanity as this amazing thing. No difference if you're driving a bus in San Francisco and you really enjoy doing it and you love providing for your family or whatever that income allows you to do, that lifestyle, great. But it's about being in alignment with your essence, with your divine purpose, following that without comparison, without worrying about what anybody else thinks. Now, that doesn't mean you give up some of the universal laws like consent, honesty, discernment. I mean, these things still apply. I'm not talking about doing something that goes against the divine essence of all other people or a large swath of people and hurting yourself or hurting. I'm not talking about listening to principles of within yourself and following this calling. And many of us, myself included at times, have adopted our limiting beliefs as our persona or as truth. And if we really look, as Heidi said, underneath it, as Marianne Williams is saying, there's probably a fear, I'll own this, of failure. So I'm just not going to try. I could do it, but yeah, I'm not. I'm just going to stay here where I'm kind of comfortable and play small.
I think I was looking at, as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And to be liberated from our own fear takes faith, because if we're in a lot of fear, most of the time there's not total faith in whatever action we need to take to be liberated. And sometimes that's where getting support is really helpful, because you can look at what is that piece keeping you from liberation? What is the fear that is happening? And I think something that comes up for me sporadically, and I might have mentioned this on last week's call, is survivor's guilt. Like that piece of, if other people aren't doing well, can I express how joyous and happy I am? If other people aren't struggling financially, can I say that I just landed a new contract? I mean, there's so many ways that I've seen people shrink to be humble in the name of humility, but it's not necessarily humility. And so I love this. I love to read this, because as we're liberated, that lifts people up. It doesn't lift others up to have ourselves be small or to be having a horrible time. I mean, obviously, we all go through it. It's life happening to us. We all have pain. We all have pleasure. We all have great times. We all have really hard times. And can we be real with all of that, or do we just share the bad times? I mean, check in with yourself right now. What do you share more of in your life with other people verbally? Do you share more of your joy and successes, or do you share more of your problems and challenges? Just curious. Type it in the chat box.
A really important one. It's a great way to look at, I think, whether your life is a liberated life or a life that is limited. I know for me, when I'm complaining a lot, predicting bad future events will occur, letting everybody else know that I know what's going to happen, this kind of know-it-all, those are usually good indicators that I'm not actually in my humble, confident self. So I think that's a good tool that Heidi just gave us. Paying attention to what's coming out of our mouth, what's going on in our minds. And who do you want to spend time with, Heidi? Somebody who's like, Heidi, I'm so glad to see you. God, I love you. It's so great. You're so amazing. Or the person who's like, well, you haven't called me in a month. I don't even know what you've been doing. Very different approach.
I actually have a funny story about that, Timothy. As this is true. It's so funny you brought that up. So I am not a person that has regular contact with friends. I will go months and not talk to somebody, and then I'll talk to them. And I've been that way my whole life. So there are a few close people in my life, like my children, that I talk to regularly, or my beloved. And other than that, I am very sporadic in which I interact with you. And I have friends that are the same as me. And I want to give a shout out to my stepmom, Piggy Love, because she's one of the people that I can go months without talking to. And the minute we pick up the phone, we're like, oh my God, I love you. And it feels like we talked 5 minutes ago, and we're just close and loving and open. And then I have, another family member who literally every time I would get in contact, or if they got in contact with me, it was just like Timothy said, like I haven't called, it was really always, I felt so much shame every time I got in touch with them that I'm literally not in touch with them. So you called me on it, but it's a true thing for me. I want to be around people that have acceptance and joy to reconnect. And that's not bad or good. I know that some people have different boundaries around friendships and anything. I just thought it was funny you brought that up because it's totally true about me. And just in general, do you want to be around people that are super positive? Like, what's attractive to you? I know when I'm with people that are grateful and they're looking at the positive things in life, even if they're going through a hard time and they share their hard time, they can reach for the silver lining, or they might see an opportunity that comes out of the chaos. And that is very attractive. And to be around people who have no hope, who can't see, and are constantly negative about the traffic, about the TV, about whatever, it wears you down. It dims your light.
Yeah, the distinction you're describing is where it's consistently negative.
Yeah.
And sometimes, for no apparent reason, when you look at the person's actual life, and then there's a difference between that and somebody who life events happen, they're kind of going down, they had a car accident, they got cancer, they're divorced, whatever. And yeah, I mean, I am not arguing that we don't lean in and be there for our friends or our family members or our loved ones when they need us. That's different than someone who's just consistently negative, bringing nothing but, like, somebody you say, oh, I got this great idea, I'm going to do this. And then they go, oh, well, you'll never, I mean, so-and-so tried, they failed. How could you do it? Right? Like, that's not somebody who's supporting you being your Marianne Williamson self, right?
Your Marianne Williamson self. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to also, here we are, we're talking about a pathway towards authenticity, towards living a life that goes beyond your wildest imagination. I really like that sentence. For me, and I believe for Heidi, one key to that is surrender, meaning really turning it over to the higher power, to the universe, if some people prefer that term, to the mystery. And that doesn't mean that we don't buy the lottery ticket or we don't go plant food in the garden. We don't do the things that we know we need to do, that we're being guided to do, but that we're surrendering this idea that we're in control and that we, with our mind, your ego, know what's best. And we're actually practicing awareness, the 3 A's, as Heidi calls them. Awareness, help me out.
Awareness, acceptance, action. AAA spirit.
Awareness, acceptance, action. These are 3 keys. We have a whole talk on them to help us know that we're actually surrendering to the divine or to that inner voice that comes from our heart in all of us. I will stand on this. In all of us, if we listen deeply into our hearts, not our traumas, not our mental belief systems, not our religions, but deeply into our heart, there's nothing wrong there. If everyone with consent, honesty, and discernment were to manifest their heart's desire, the world would be a better place. So using awareness, acceptance, and then action, and practicing listening to our heart or to the divine can make our life unimaginable. So much transformation can occur when we practice those simple things. Heidi?
What? Just kidding.
Do you want to add to that or move it forward? Like next steps in living an unimaginable life.
Oh, I think jump into next steps of living an unimaginable life. I think that awareness, acceptance, action has been important to me. And when I remember it, life is easier and it's just a way to slow down. And when we're acting without aware, sometimes we're not aware until we're aware. And the minute we get aware, then we can slow down and then have acceptance of what is the truth of what's going on. And then we can take action. Many people skip the middle one. They're like, I'm aware and I'm acting. And without accepting what the current reality is, we can make some pretty poor choices that hurt ourselves and others. So it's a very important method. And I love that you bring it up and that I'm reminded of the tool. And all of these things are tools. These are things broken down so that we can act in ways where life is more life supporting instead of life depleting.
Yeah.
So let's jump into your question.
If we throw in one more A, it's a whole sentence starts with an A. So it doesn't really fit the 3 A's, but it's another aspect, and it probably would be called acceptance in Heidi's definition. That's coming to what is, living life from a place of as it is. So, for example, I'm surrounded by people, clients and friends who are longing for relationship, longing to be met in a particular way that will then bring them a sense of completeness or full satisfaction in their living of their life. This is what they imagine. And they're bypassing the present moment because it feels lonely, alone, and there's all this energy going to finding this person that will complete them in this way and make life fulfilling. I empathize with this. This is a difficult one. I think many, many, many people on the planet, a great majority, are lonely or alone, either way you want to define it, and looking for partnership or relationship or community in order to not feel that way. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the longing. It's beautiful. But when we get to where we're leaning to center, we're not really with awareness and acceptance. We're not with as it is. Sometimes as it is very painful, very difficult. And I'm making an argument that even in the discomfort, even in the pain, there is a place we can come to where we surrender and accept whatever is happening and find peace, joy. I will give a personal example because I don't want to sound like I'm telling you something imaginary. When I got cancer, tumor in my tongue and tonsil, it grew. I knew it was there. Two doctors took CAT scans and told me you do not have cancer. I knew they were wrong. I knew there was something. Eventually, I got someone who put a camera down my throat, and he looked at it and went, "Oh yeah, you definitely have a tumor. It's just the kind you have." So, tumor. By the time we went into treatment, that little 3-inch tumor had grown almost down to the bottom of my esophagus, and I was in a lot of pain. So much pain that I was like, I think I just want to die. I don't think I want to go through this, the chemo, radiation treatment, all these things. And I had a good friend named Bertram reach out to me and say, Timothy, you're greater than this, more powerful. Do what you know how to do. Go in, use meditation, change your beliefs around this tumor. Know that you're going to get. I'm not knocking Western medicine. I'm going to finish the story. But I went deep into meditation every single day, probably 10 hours a day. Some people call it the quantum, call it the divine. And I imagined my death, and it felt great. I didn't feel any pain there. I felt deep, deep, deep on the other side. And it was almost like I'd step back through this doorway and Timothy would disappear. And the essence of who I am was still present. And I literally heard, what an angel, call it God, a voice that said, yeah, you can leave. You've created this situation so that you can get out, say goodbye to your family, do it well. But you didn't fulfill your purpose. You didn't, as Marianne Williamson says, come and live your unimaginable life. I knew that was true. And so I said, oh, well, what is it? I'll go back if you tell me. And the voice said, God said, it's a mystery. And you get to choose to go back if you want to. Otherwise, you can come this way. And again, there was no personality here. It wasn't like Timothy was making a decision. That was enough for me to go, oh, I haven't fulfilled my purpose. It's greater than what I can imagine. And all I have to do is come back and listen, be aware, accept, and then act. Accept as it is. And from that point on, the pain grew worse and worse with every day. And I was so happy to be alive. And I went into the doctor in the 3rd week. They take a picture of the tumor every week. And he said, Timothy, you're in a 2% category here. I still want you to finish the radiation and chemotherapy, but your tumor's all gone. I'm not saying I got rid of the tumor, but I do feel that I surrendered at a level, became aware, moved into acceptance that, as Bertram said, I am more powerful. We are more powerful than, and magically, 1 week span, tumor this big, gone. And then I finished the chemo and radiation because I believe in Western medicine. And I learned a lot through all that pain. It was just a sensation. And I was able to find happiness and joy even in that moment. There are people who were here to support me who can attest to that transformation. Did I create that transformation? No. That transformation came from surrender, awareness, acceptance. And then the action I took was I surrendered.
Love that you shared that story, Timothy. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'm really happy you're still here.
Yeah, you were there as I kind of came out of it.
It's powerful. I witnessed that with my parents, and I shared this on a call we did with my dad, living with a terminal death sentence. That both my parents were diagnosed with terminal cancer. And this is not good or bad. It's a different experience that I witnessed, and this is what I observed. My dad has a passion to live more than anybody I've ever met on the planet. The man loves life. He lives life to the fullest with whatever is going on, and he's had probably more pain than most of us could imagine. And a lot of things happen in his body. Anyway, lives life, and that's his resonance, that's his joy. What's the next fun thing I can do? How can I, have fun with my wife? What can I create? What can I build? And my mom was like, I've lived a good life. I'm good. I don't want to do this. I'm out, and she was peaceful with leaving. It wasn't like she was wishing she could stay, really. She was just in total acceptance of like, okay, if this kills me, I'm good. I'm not fighting for anything. So she also had surrender and had the most beautiful death experience, not herself like not being in pain, but what she was surrounded in her resonance of peace was the most beautiful death I ever witnessed. And then my dad is still living, like he is on it. And the reason that I share that story is we can't control much. We can't control much in this life. A lot of things happen outside our control every day. We do have some control over our attitude and our thoughts. And I say some because there's times in my life where I've had such extreme depression. I did not believe you when you told me that I could have control over that. So I want to be tender to this. But what I have learned about manifestation and living into this, we are divine and we're powerful beyond measure. So this idea that we are powerful beyond measure, like I can't even have words for that. But what Timothy shared, what my dad's gone through, what I've seen and gone through in my life, indicates evidence that we are powerful beyond measure. But what I've learned about manifestation is if we're trying to think positive or what do they say? We cannot think our way into right action, but we can act our way into right thinking. And if you're thinking of what you don't have, I'm lonely, I'll never have the person I want. I really want this partnership. I really want this life. I hate my job. Why can everybody else get paid this and do something they love and I have to do what I'm doing? And when we get into that is our field of attraction. It's what we see, it's what we live in. And so you can read stories. If you don't believe me, I ask you to read some things about the survivors of the Holocaust. And there's one common thread that I have seen in anybody that overcomes the worst adversity, whether it's cancer, whether it's living through a concentration camp, whether it's through family suicide, whether it's through addiction. The common thread is hope and faith and having the ability to be and cultivate peaceful, happy, joyous feelings in the moment, not someday in the future. When I quit smoking, I'll be happy with myself. When I have a lover that I want, I'll feel like I'm good enough. But how can we look at what we want in life, then go the second step, see the things you want in life that you don't have. How would you feel if you actually had those things? If I was cured from cancer, if I had the job I wanted, what are the feelings that I would have? I'm getting goosebumps right now. So if the feelings are, I'd have peace, I'd feel open and bright and radiant. And then you go back to today. What can I grasp onto today? Because thinking about those things doesn't make me have those feelings. It makes me feel lonely, afraid. I'm terrified of this cancer. I'm never going to have the person I want. So it doesn't give me those feelings. I can't reach that far. But can I take those feelings that I know I would have if I had those things, and can I bring them into today and think of something that cultivates that feeling now, that feeling of gratitude now? And if you're in a horrible situation, this is really dumb because people that lived through horrific situations had to do this much more dynamically. But I have a personal experience. I had a DUI 20 some years ago, and I had to do 2 nights in jail, and they put me in the holding cell for like I don't know, an exuberant amount of hours. And I was with these kind of crazy people, and it was dirty, nasty, gross. And I literally sat there on the bench, concrete bench, and I didn't notice anybody around me. I went into a meditation, and I went somewhere in my mind where I had the most peaceful, quiet, amazing time. And it had nothing to do with what I was surrounded by. And I could have went into, oh my God, that lady's going to kick my ass, or oh my God, I'm sitting on this concrete bench. But I was able to go into visioning of what made me feel good and what made me feel calm and what made me feel peaceful. And those 12 hours or however long I was sitting on that bench weren't spent there. They were spent somewhere else. And so how can you have gratitude today? How can you have the feeling of connection and love that you would have if you had the love of your life? Can you get that from watching a sunset? Can you get it with an animal? Can you get it by looking at pictures of a bunny and a lion hanging out together? I mean, that's something that I go to a lot, as animals that wouldn't normally mix, and I look at them and I get the feeling of love in my heart. And the more that we cultivate the feelings that we want to get to and we think we're going to have with some particular goal, we're surrendering into the day. We're putting into the energy field that we can already feel it. We have no lack, and more comes to us.
Yes. Let's just take a moment. And I was doing it as Heidi was talking. Wherever you are right now, put in the chat box what comes to you, maybe in the word of an emotion, frequent, deep. Let's just come into a resonance, a felt experience of what Heidi's talking. I see or sense some of my longings, and rather than long for them and feel the lack of, I'm feeling that they are already occurring. Some of them are full financial abundance through doing things that are meaningful and contribute to my life, ideally, my sense of meaning, personal transformation, myself, and maybe something different for you, maybe dance or art or writing a book. It may be spending more time with your children. Just feel whatever that is. Turn that longing to the actual. Let it spread silently across your face as joy, expanded heart. It requires a little bit of faith, doesn't it? It's enjoyable if you let yourself, no matter what the outside circumstances are. That's the beginning of change. So again, giving us talking about another tool, Heidi brought it up, which is power of visualizing by feeling, sensing, imagining what your heart truly desires as happening. Takes a little bit of practice.
So I want to do a gratitude roll call. So I just typed mine in the chat box. So gratitude roll call, people. I want you typing in the chat box what you're grateful for right now, today, not in the future, someday when you get what you want, but the things that you can lean into now that give you good feelings. And my roll call was getting to do these talks and inspire others. It always lights me up. I'm super grateful. The feeling I get when I do this talk is connection, inspiration. I get a little adrenaline, and I'm a recovered addict. So yay me, I get a little high. I'm grateful for being loved. I've felt a lot of love in my life lately, and receiving love has felt really amazing. I'm really grateful that my kids are well. It gives me a feeling of peace and happiness. And I'm super grateful for animals that have been around me lately that crack me up and just bring joy to my heart and lightness. So what about you guys? I'd love to read your gratitude list. Please type it in the chat box. Timothy, you want to read yours?
I just wrote Tomoko. She's my nesting partner. I'm so grateful for her. The level of communication, the honesty, the ability for her to hold her own self and not need me to quote unquote heal her, fix anything. My ability to not try to go there. Just amazing relationship. All my other friends, lovers, family, people who are involved in my life. But, I go through the whole list like dance and golf. Went golfing the other day. Fabulous. Such a great experience. Meditation. I would add sleep, good food, good water, oxygen, breathing, nature. So much to be grateful for. I'm very, very grateful for the grace. I use the word grace, it's an actual energy of God. I'm grateful for humility, learning what it truly means. I'm grateful for pain and suffering because it's brought me to a place of appreciating that there is something deeper, greater called love. I could keep going. So much gratitude. And Heidi's bringing us into a practice of another way besides visualization and meditation to come into resonance with what it is that's feeding us. And when we do, when we're grateful rather than complaining, rather than scarcity, go into gratitude, we usually manifest or attract to us more of that. Grateful.
Okay, listeners, I'd love to see your gratitude list if you'd love to share them. I think the more gratitude we share and the more appreciation we share, it lifts everyone up. So we are, let's see, where's that quote? We are liberating others just by sharing our own liberation and our light. So I'd love to see if you'd love to type in there, we'd love to read it. If not, that's okay too. Full permission to be wherever you are at with whatever your reality is. And I want to be tender. And Timothy already said this, that of course there's nothing wrong with sharing our pains and our struggles and what we're going through. I always, when I talk to friends, and this is something Love Coach Academy is really big about, is empathetic listening. Like, we do need to take out the trash. So if I'm listening to someone, I'm like, all right, I got the trash bag. Let's take it out. You need to empty out, you need to share, you need to be seen, and we don't need to be alone in our struggles. So that's not what we're talking about. We all need that. We're talking about having our current reality, which may include a lot of trash. It might include a lot of pain. It might include some horrific life experiences. And even with that, can you be grateful for the sunrise? Can you be grateful that the pain is pushing you to learn something? I mean, when I've been in active addiction, I'm pissed off. I'm mad at God. I am mad that I have this disease that I have to struggle with. And I know that when I go towards recovery and I do the work, and it's fucking work, excuse my language, that I get to be happy, joyous, and free. And so what can I find when I'm in the dark hour that makes me happy, joyous, and free that day? And like I said, one of those things is animals for me. Didn't matter how deep I was in my disease or how happy I was, an animal can always bring me joy. I can always be entertained by that. So you don't have to reach for something big. If you're in the thick of it right now, come to the Wednesday night empathy group, reach out to Timothy or I, get support, and grab on to whatever it is, as small as it can be. A cup of coffee. I freaking love my morning coffee. I'm grateful that I get to have coffee. Not everybody gets to have a cup of coffee. And find something that you can reach for that can cultivate a different feeling. And that doesn't mean to ignore what you're in or what you're going through. You want to read what's in the chat box, Timothy?
Yeah, Alyssa wrote, grateful for Lady Love, visionary priestess, demonic healer, woman of light. Thank you for sharing yourself with the world. I think she's talking about you.
Thank you, Lisa.
And
Thank
Heidi's
you.
talking about going through it, right? Not a bypass. So if that's what you heard in what either one of us said, we're not talking about moving straight to gratitude and not feeling your sadness or your physical pain, whatever it is that's going on in your life. No, we're talking about feeling that. so you can get authentic, where you have room for what you're grateful for. And for me, when I was in deep, high level pain from the tumor that was here, and then the radiation and stuff they were doing to me, or doing with, um, I was grateful for being able to meditate. I was grateful for being able to lay in such a nice house and such a nice bed. I was grateful for people who drove me to my appointments. But I wasn't not in pain. People who go through concentration camps, when we read some of the books, with joy in their heart and an expanded level, it doesn't mean that they weren't seeing and witnessing and experiencing their own sadness. They were just being through it as opposed to letting it consume them or um, becoming a complete victim to it. And again, I have no idea what it's like to go through an experience like that. So
Yeah.
I'm only going off of books I've read, and I'm going off the fact that everybody goes through that a little differently. Everybody goes through cancer a little differently. Everybody goes through life a little differently. What we're really, I want to bring us back to it, talking about today is because most of us are healthy. Most of us have enough food, enough bed sheets, enough laundry soap, enough water, most of us in this country. And those of us who don't, maybe that's something we need to look at. Maybe that's another talk. But those of us that just have a plenitude, what is it that's keeping us from being joyful, being happy, living a life of expression? And I think that's something to look at, as we talked about earlier. Maybe make a list. But what is it that's actually behind that? And I think Marianne Williams is correct that most of us, it's a fear of success, talking about myself. It's a fear of what will other people think? It's a fear of, those are the things that typically hold me back. It's the shadow itself. And I agree with her. I didn't come here to hide in the shadows.
I wrote the words in our chat box: acceptance, surrender, and being with your current reality. And maybe that's a talk we can do soon. But what I was thinking of as Timothy was talking is it's both and those are words I like too. It's both this and it's that. So it's both living in our current reality with acceptance and surrender, and reaching for something we can be grateful for in that current reality, something that can give us a feeling of peace or happiness or whatever it is we're searching for. And in surrendering, again, it takes the trust and faith. And sometimes for those of us that are super hard-headed like I am, it's been having to be beat down with the pain in order to surrender, like getting so exhausted from the pain that I have no choice but to let go. And so the goal in my life is to be able to learn by vision pulling me and not pain pushing me. But it hasn't been my experience. I have been very self-willed and have had to be beaten into surrender rather than going with the flow. And of course, these later years of my life, I get there a lot faster. I know to stop paddling in the ocean and that I can float. And when we can accept what our current reality is, that's the moment it can change.
David Weaver says something along the same lines. He says, discipline equals freedom. Only true knowledge and mindfulness comes through suffering. And I often say suffering is our greatest gift. Heidi's talking about too, like really, in a way, disciplining ourselves to stay true to ourselves or be mindful or be aware and practice gratitude, practice surrender. So thank you, David, for that.
So I think we'll wrap it up unless Timothy wants to jump into anything different. I want to invite you guys again. Having the resonance of gratitude and appreciation lifts us all up. So I want to invite you to type it into the chat box, your gratitude list for today, and let it lift you and others.
I would make one last personal expression or description of another way. And these eyes, which are the the soul, the windows to my soul, but they're also my brain exposed. Brain is the nervous system. The eyes are part of the nervous system. Brain goes all the way down here. Um, and these eyes are the only place that the brain is exposed to the outside. Um, most of us are caught up in looking, hearing, smelling, sensing the external world. And for good reason, we have made it here as humanity. We were blind. Maybe I shouldn't make pronunciations like that. But what I'm making an argument for is that when we actually meditate, close our eyes, when we go inward, there is a world, universe, as expansive as the one we perceive, including all the stars and on the universes that exist outside of us. And so, as David points out, I do believe that suffering can often help us move forward, go to deep, deep places of peace, emptiness, spaciousness. And in that sense, if we become our most adult, integrated self, there really is nothing to do. It's the person who is happy and content with what they have, no matter whether they're rich or they're happy. And those people, in my experience that I've sat with, have done a lot of internal work, meaning explore the internal universe, usually through meditation, sometimes I am kind of hinting that that too is part of being the most amazing, integrated expression of oneself that you can be, is more of a spiritual path, surrender to what is inside.
I love it, Timothy. Grateful for Timothy Earl. Thank you for your soft and strong embodiment of the magnificent masculine divine. Your empathetic safeness for women shines big. Makes me want to cry.
There are parts of me that thought I would not hear words like that. Thank you so much. Really, really touching me.
We also have surrender to what is inside. I love that. And Timothy said that. I think somebody typed it in the chat box. And I wrote, there is really nothing to do. I've been hearing that a lot lately. And you also said it. And so there you go. There's really nothing to do. Dive into your current reality and see where you can be with it and cultivate that sense of well-being in what is right now. And please reach out to Timothy or I anytime. We said at the beginning of the call, we both do discovery sessions. They're complimentary to you. They're 30 minutes. The only action you have to take is to show up. So we invite you to do it.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for showing up today.